I'm not going to use any of those. Can you hear me? Sound good? All right, perfect. Let's jump in. We won't have any time for questions in this session. We packed it with 20 minutes, but I'm going to be available at the booth with my team, so feel free to pop by later on. Now, according to a leading CRM company, companies with higher engagement ratings, higher engagement scores, right, tend to drive lower churn rates. No surprises there, right? Higher engagement makes your product and services more sticky. And I think all of us have experienced that some way or other. When I first signed up for Spotify, that music app, I was a free user, right? Very quickly, I love it. It's got all this music that I used to grow up with. I just couldn't live without it. I soon paid for it. And after paying for it, I wanted my kids to be across the music, and I wanted to know what my kids are listening to. So I eventually became a family member. And by some strange coincidence, at 3 a.m. this morning, I received an email from Spotify telling me that they're going to increase their price. Right? Anyone received that this morning? All right, quite a few of you, right? So guess what? I'm still going to continue subscribing to them, right? Because I'm engaged, right? I'm not looking for any competitors, competing products. I'm going to be continuing to be a happy subscriber. So this drives us to this topic of what's happening in today's world. Acquiring new customers have been increasingly costly, increasingly expensive, right? Not quite sustainable. And, 80% of businesses are actually finding new revenue streams, right, from existing customer base. So today, the good news, what we're going to share with you today is to talk a little bit about how organizations are dealing with this, how they can power sustainable growth with customer first data strategies. So you're probably wondering who I am, this face here. My name is Ben Liu. I lead the solution consulting team here at Amplitude. Very excited to be here with all of you this morning. Thank you for your time. I know it's an interesting morning. I've been sitting there listening to all these presenters, great stuff from Kenny and Sachin. Very blessed to be in a country that focuses so much on current trends and technology. I had such a good time, I kind of almost forgot about my presentation. All right, but thanks for your time. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things. I can't move too much, sorry. What's a customer-first strategy look like today? We talked about a whole bunch of data, right? Data volumes are exponentially increasing. How do you make sense of it? And what does a customer-first strategy look like in a world of apps and digital services coming up almost on a daily basis? And we're going to take a deep dive into what behavioral data is. We all know data, right? What does it mean to us? What does it mean to you and your teams, right? As data leaders, all of us are here to figure out what to do with our data, right? How best to manage them, how best to analyze them, and ultimately take action on them. And the last topic we'll cover is the democratization of insights, right? Ever so important. Data is just data. They're just, sitting there in large storage spaces, right? We need to activate them through our teams within the organization. So that's what we're going to touch on. So bear with me. All right. Great digital experiences are built by data. We know that already. And that's why you're here. That's why I'm here. We call that data intelligence. Yeah? Right? You and I. Right? It's got many names, but essentially, we're trying to make sense of this data. Is data intelligence. And as you're well aware, we are in the thick of the digital revolution, right? It used to be just e-commerce sites, websites, maybe chat, But these days, the moment you wake up, just like I woke up this morning to a Spotify bill in my email, the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, right, we are being engaged, or we're giving out data, we're receiving data. There's massive amount of data that's interchangeable, right? Anyone on Strava who went for a morning run this morning? I would congratulate you if you did. I didn't. Point is, you are submitting data into Strava on your health, on your heart rate, how well you're doing, how much rest you're taking, and then you spend the rest of the day collaborating with your teams, right, through Slack or WhatsApp, and you spend your dinner time posting photos of what you've had for dinner, right, or what you're gonna have, or what you should have and not have, right, all that stuff. And you go to bed with maybe a meditation app. Now, we're very fortunate to work with all of these product-led companies, right? Product-led companies where they drive their product innovations, right, based on their analysis of their data, their analysis of their behavioral data. And there are some of these, and with these great partners of ours, right, we learned a few things. We've learned that they are going through significant headwinds. Right, they're facing some massive challenges. Oops. It's good I checked. Now, not quite of a prediction anymore, but, there was a prediction made way back that between 2020 to 2023, there's going to be over 500 million apps that's going to be released just within this period. We're in the middle of 2023. Who agrees? Just one? Really? You should see the number of apps on my phone that my son has installed on it. We're definitely way past it, okay? Right? Now, the important fact with this is it's actually 40 times more than significantly doubled, it actually doubled the number of apps created in the last 40 years. So there's no surprise, I think. To me, there's no surprise here. But I think what's important here is that the pressures hitting businesses are quite clear, right? Number one, we have seen an increase in competition. Look at the number of food delivery apps that are coming up, right? When you have one, very quickly you have another, right? Food Panda, Grab's out there. We have more and more customers that have increased expectations on these apps, right? Remember the days when we're very happy with just texting somebody, but now we want emojis. Now we want calendar invites. Now we want to be able to share graphics and whatnot. There's also growing complexity in supporting these apps, right? Because of the platforms that we're on. There used to be just one OS. If anyone remembers, Nokia, Windows. Okay, I'm showing my age now. But fact is that the platforms are constantly evolving and talking about sustainability of data, talking about the governance and the security of it is increasingly complex, right? And our partners are telling us that they have this massive pressure to innovate faster, to move quicker, to be able to release features, right? There are product companies out there, and then I think some of you would know, that have daily releases of features. Okay? Not even exaggerating. That's a fact. Now, whoops. Okay. Introducing the crap. I keep missing this. So introducing the power of behavioral data. Now, we feel at Amplitude that if you can convert this data to behavioral data, fully harness or leverage behavioral data, you are on the right track to successfully meeting your strategic goals. Okay? So what is behavioral data? Now, it is what you need. It's essentially what you need to identify, right, your customer touch points of your products or services. A single view of your customer. Very commonly said, but how do we actually do it when we are in a period of data explosion, right? Behavioral data helps us make sense of complex digital journeys. Now, you'd say, hey, data is data. It's all in this repository. If I can put it all in one data lake, I've solved my problem, right? But you're not actually addressing the different stages of that life cycle, from acquisition, engagement, to retention. The very moment a customer signs up on your app and what they do after that, right? What features they're engaging with, what features they don't like, that is what behavioral data is about, okay? Customer journeys these days have also become very complex. How many of you would access an app from one single source? Almost never, right? You'd be from a browser with multiple computers. You could be on multiple mobile devices, right? And the list goes on. So they're no longer short, they're very long, they can be pretty complex, and more importantly, they're non-linear, right? So behavioral data attempts to stitch your customer journeys across devices, resolving the identities to make sense of how your users are engaging with your digital services, right? Based on random actions that they may be triggering on your applications. Okay, so so only when you have the ability to access behavioral data can you trigger actionable insights. All right, and this chart. Well, it's not rocket science again, right? But from multiple devices, when you're engaging any of your product and services, we want to know what the churn rates are. Now, it seems like a simple calculation, but it's about being specific. It's about being accurate. Like, why are they exactly churning? Is it because the shopping cart takes too long to add an item in? Is it because the payment options are not available, right? We really want to get to that granular types of insights, because that will eventually determine something, or that will eventually be something that a team can decide what they want to act on, how they want to act on it. Now, actionable insights has three main components, right? Before you make an action in any products or services, there are a couple of things that you want to take note of, right? You first need to have an optimal view of that customer journey. Now, this view allows you to make some predictions, some hypotheses, right? You're not gonna, if you're running a digital service, you can't really take the risk of making any guesswork, okay? You want to have some in the moment personalization, right? We used to call this hyper-personalization, so that you're able to test your hypothesis, right? I think that if I reduce the shopping cart to 2 clicks or 1 click, like Amazon had done, right? That might actually improve my conversion rates. Okay, so hyper-personalization through cohorting of my users. And then the third one, which we talked a little bit when we first started, we're talking about retention. Retention is important because whatever features that you're going to release, you can't take that leap of faith. You need to make sure that that release is going to affect your stickiness of that application in a positive way, right? Because a lot of engineering effort's going to get into building up that feature, right? So before we even do that, right, we need to have actionable insights, okay? Now, the next thing we want to talk about here is the democratization of insights. I think in the past, the terminology was democratization of data, right? But data is great and data is enormous. We're talking about democratization of insights here, okay? And what that looks like is that we're not just talking about accessing data in a data lake with a great visualization tools. There are tons of tools out there, and in working with our customers, what we're hearing is that, oh, I've got this data warehouse tool, and it's kind of helping me get some insights, right? The truth is, it's giving them great insights from a data perspective, but does it really match that into the customer journey of this very sophisticated life cycle of this customer journey? Okay, so insights democratization refers to what we do with the knowledge that we gain from our data. Okay, and with that knowledge, are we able to make it accessible across teams in your organization? Whether they're technical folks or they're non-technical folks, executives, we want insights at their fingertips so that they can analyze the trends, take action immediately. Now, again, from what we're hearing from our customers and partners alike, sometimes businesses would put a ticket in for an analysis report. And the backlog of this is anywhere from a month to 6 months. All right? Has anyone seen that kind of situation? You might have, okay? Now, that's a problem because what uses of data if you're not able to make sense out of it and share it across teams, right? It really limits and really makes it very expensive to have all this data in your possession, okay? Now, who's in charge of it? Now, our point of view, our humble point of view, is all of you here in the room as data leaders, right? You should be at the forefront of building insights democracy within your organization, all right? I was in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month ago now. I think I was speaking to the head of data for a pretty successful online service provider. And he shared with me that he now has got data analysts in every one of his business teams. And he's got no more backlogs, right? He's no longer dealing with tickets. And he candidly shared that, I don't know what these data analysts are doing anymore, but I know I don't have any more tickets to deal with. Okay? So to me, that's kind of like a good sign, a positive sign of insight democratization. Okay, so what are some of the positive impacts if we can democratize insights across organizations? First, better resource allocation, right? As I just mentioned before, now you're not going to, your data team will no longer be managing tickets and measuring their KPIs based on how many reports they churn out, right? Your data team will actually be involved in strategic initiatives like AI, ML, like governance, right? Like personalization. These are actual initiatives that have an impact on your bottom line, okay? You have cross-functional collaboration, right? Now, because insights are now accessible across teams, team folks can make hypotheses and check in with each other and calibrate and hold each other accountable, right, to these insights. Like, hey, I'm seeing this, what are you seeing, right? And they can have really open, productive conversations on that. And ultimately, right, with the democratization of insights, you can drive and increase speed of innovation. Because these data are actionable. They are based on your actual behavioral data, right? And now what you're essentially doing is empowering your businesses to make data-driven decisions. All right? All right. Now, coming back to reality. The reality is that we need a couple of strategies to make this happen, okay? Data literacy in companies tend to be a little bit weak. As data leaders over here, we need to champion data literacy across the organization. What does this mean, right? In some of our organizations, like I mentioned before, you have your product teams, your marketing teams coming to you to extract data, right? Hey, send me this report. Explain to me what this report means and so on, right? Now, it used to be we never had the tools to do that, all right? But in modern day tools, we have the ability for self-service analytics. So we as data leaders need to be able to drive that across teams. Teach them how to use it. The example I cited before, placing an analyst in every one of these teams does help that situation significantly, right? Now, strategy number 2. How many of you have ever inherited data that you cannot trust? Anybody cannot trust the data that you're on? Really? Really? Yeah? Again, not difficult to see, right? Someone might have started an initiative, exponential growth, maybe COVID happened. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but something happened and you have a huge influx of data and you kind of lose track of how to govern those data. So in order to build trust in your data, you need some strategy in place. You need to plan what the implementation, where the data sources are coming from. You need to have the ability to set governance on that data, right? Governance, like Sachin was talking about earlier. Sachin's gone, but Sachin was talking about earlier. If you have a massive amount of data, right, and you're trying to figure out what features to release in your products, you don't technically need all of that data. What you do need is an ability to intelligently create cohorts to experiment with your hypothesis. Okay? And data integration, right? Very important. 5Chen was talking a little bit about that. Now, data integration is always important because as we collect events data on your customer behaviors, data integration allows us to enrich that data, right? Enrich that data with maybe CRM data, maybe with loyalty data, because the reality is we live in a very complex world with several siloed systems, right? So integration is key to help you build this level of trusted data. And the third strategy that we want to talk about here, right, is to have a platform that allows you to do all of that. A purpose-built platform that is built ground up, right, to be able to access this large amount of data, right? Scale with your business. The last thing we want to do is that, hey, you're doing really well with your product and services, but because of growth, we're unable to support it because the product isn't able to deal with that. We want a platform that's able to help you continuously govern your data. I think there's a common trend since this morning. I told you I was sitting there, I was quite enjoying what I was hearing because it's aligned with our messaging, in that governance is a continuous process, right? And I would take that a little bit further. Insight democratization is a continuous process. It's not a one-off project, right? The good news is all of us are here, right? We've got job security, okay? Now, we also like another requirement of this platform is it needs to be collaborative, right? We don't want another product that it sits on a siloed stack somewhere, and only when someone remembers it will come and use it, right? Collaboration is key in the world today. Now, I used to come from the CRM space many years ago, and I remember back in that day we were talking about collaboration, right? And it still holds today. Collaboration against your insights helps with hypothesis, helps with experimentation, and helps you get your products right. Okay, so what we're suggesting in a nutshell is insight democratization is built on the foundation of trusted data. With the help of all of you here, data champions, you need to drive data literacy. You need to drive collaboration so that your teams can be enabled to make these data-driven decisions fast. All right? Make no mistake about it, speed is of the essence. Okay, how does this go into action? So very quickly, now, no tech presentation can end without a customer reference. Okay? So, RBI, anyone heard of RBI? RBI, no? Really? No? Probably one of the biggest fast food chain owners out there. Some stats here, $35 billion in revenue, 29,000 restaurants across the globe, including Asia, over 100 countries. Now, RBI worked with us on a couple of key initiatives. They had a hunch. They had a hypothesis. It wasn't really a hypothesis, but they're thinking. They wanted to determine whether there was a connection between how quickly their app performed, how quickly their app loads up. They were wondering whether there's a connection with that to purchasing decisions, to actually placing an order, right? So they work with us in setting up their behavioral insights, right, to help understand where customers are dropping off, where customers are super engaged, where customers are adding more items, recommended items, a little bit like what we do in McDonald's, right? The second thing they came to us with is they wanted to facilitate the democratization of insights. They were leaders in this, right? Because RBI manages a bunch of franchises, essentially. And from their perspective, they need to give these insights to their franchisees. All right? So they wanted to know how they can share that in a seamless way, secure, governed, and seamless way. They also have a huge data lake that they use called Snowflake. All right? And they were saying that, we got some customer data in Snowflake. As we plan out our customer journey, how can we use our data in Snowflake to enrich the customer value? Right? So they did this with us. And by the way, side note here, Amplitude has just launched a partnership with Snowflake. So if any of you out there works with Snowflake and want to know more about how Amplitude and Snowflake works, come talk to us at the booth. But ultimately, coming back to RBI, what they had achieved in this is that they realized with their hypothesis that in fact, if they had improved their performance of their apps, they can increase conversion rates. So they released their engineering efforts in improving their apps. On Android, they improved performance by 43%. On iOS, they improved their load times by up to 16%. And that translated to 4% in conversion rates. You might think to me, Ben, 4%, that's tiny. But 4% on 35 billion? Not that tiny, right? So that was massive. So, in summary, Amplitude helped customers build better products through behavioral data. Data is just data. It's how we make sense of it with that huge volumes that we have today, right? By connecting these dots and resolving the identities, right? Taking away the complexity, converting that into insights. My last slide for you is a little bit of a chart, but this is essentially how Amplitude are working with our partners out there to do it. From the bottom of the stack, right, this is where we call this the real-time data management stack. Now, no matter where your data sits, right, we want to ingest them. And I think, again, I'm referencing Sachin a lot, right, because what he said really made sense. We don't want to just ingest whatever you have in your data lake. It's not a grab for data, right? It's about making sense of it. We want to bring that in with governance. We want to work with your product team so that they know what their metrics are, right? So we only bring in that relevant data. And on that data set, we then push this up to a behavioral graph database. And this is something proprietary at Amplitude. We're quite proud of it because it enables businesses to make very fast and efficient queries. Some technical folks out there know that complex joins, right, does amount to processing cost. With the behavioral graph, we're able to make real-time decisions. We're able to make predictive decisions. And we pump this through the analytic solution. And where the analytic solution you see on the left, and this is where the real action takes place. This is where various teams are collaborating and working towards common goals. And this is where they make their hypothesis, and they use audiences on the right to say that, all right, I got a hypothesis. I want to test this out to my loyal customers of this age group or of this spend group, right? And with that, if this hypothesis proves to be true, right, they then go on to create bigger experiments and then eventually dedicate engineering resource to roll out those products and features. Okay? So with that, I'd like to end this presentation in wishing you power to your products. Thank you very much. My name is Ben Liu. I'll see you guys at the booth.
Now, it's been a very, very insightful event so far for BYTES Singapore. A lot of great questions as well and insights on critical